I would say that regardless of whether they're young or they're middle-aged or they're older and all that, it's really beginning to be clear to me that people are willing, once they have their little opening and then they start diving, they can cross a psychological barrier.
Welcome to the One Day at a Time podcast, where we take things one day at a time. Today in the studio, we have Simon.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming over. Simon, can you do a quick introduction about yourself?
Okay, I am a human being, and by profession, I'm a psychotherapist. It's what I do, and been doing it for quite a while. Still enjoying what I do, absolutely.
Okay, so let's break it down here. What exactly does a psychotherapist do?
I would work with my client on some issues. It ranges from mental health issues, stress, when they are in a relationship problem, interpersonal issues, work-related issues, any kind of thing that they want to work with, and to bring a different perspective or a clearer perspective to where they are and where they want to go from here. Yeah, so in essence.
You mentioned the word issues a lot of times. Do you only, do psychotherapists only work with people who have issues?
So you'll notice that, some people say problems.
Right.
But I don't use the word problems. I use the issues. Yeah. No, because we all get stuck once in a while in our life, and it's good to really speak to someone to have a different perspective. So we don't need to have any problems. We just need to be kind of like, okay, let's process through some stuff, and then to see how we can look at things from a different perspective. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, I think there is because mental health as a topic is not super prevalent in our country just yet, right? We're kind of getting there. Things like counseling, getting help, mental health. But there are quite a lot of options when it comes to mental health. Like for you, you're a psychotherapist, and then you have people like a counselor, you have a psychologist, right? So, based on all these different so-called mental health professions, like you go in and you see somebody, you talk to somebody, what are the key differences between a counselor, a psychotherapist, a psychologist, and just like a regular therapist? Is there a difference?
I don't know whether there's a regular therapist, but I'll try and be as clear as clean as I can. A counselor, you'll find them in the family service center. Yeah, they have a degree and most likely a master's in counseling. A psychotherapist, whereby we incorporate psychology. So we would have a degree in psychology as well as a degree in counseling as well. And then we can go into specifically like, I love groups, so I go into groups. Whereas the psychologists, there are many types. You can have industrial psychologists, you can have educational psychologists and so forth, who very specialized, or clinical psychologists in that sense. Yeah. And of course, that people who go to a psychiatrist, who is essentially a medical doctor, and then they work with patients who are going through really mental disorder or bipolar or any kind of disorder that you can find. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So let's say someone is facing some issues and they are open to seek assistance. So how does one make a decision on whether they should see a counselor, a psychotherapist, a psychiatrist, or a psychologist?
That's a really good question that, especially in Singapore, whereby sometimes the titles are used interchangeably, counselors or even psychotherapists and such. For a start, if one it's kind of like a little bit stuck in life, for example, with work issues or family issues, then you might just want to go with a counselor. A counselor, it's a little more short term in a sense, or else if you go to a therapist, then we may dig a little deeper. Not to say that counselors don't do that as well. They do that as well. Psychotherapists will go a little deeper. Existential issues, for example, or family origin, to see what has happened and to deal from there. Whereas if you need to go to a psychologist, sometimes they will do some assessment. Some psychologists will do assessment. A psychiatrist would then be able to do assessment plus, on top of that, to prescribe some medication. So that's primarily the difference. So if you're kind of like stuck in life, you could start with a counselor, you could start with a therapist. I think that the main point is that you have to be comfortable, you have to be ready, to be open, be comfortable with your therapist, your counselor. That that bond between the me and my client, I think that's very, very important. That's very crucial in the changes that the client want to go from here. So that's how I would look at it.
So I think if someone can get to the place where they are open to seek help, then they can make the decision on what type to go for, like a counselor or psychotherapist. And then there's also a little bit of a journey to look for a therapist that kind of can work with you, right? Because the approach might be different for different therapists.
Yes, it's quite a scary journey to look for a counselor or a therapist.
It's like dating lah.
Dating can be fun and exciting. Looking for a therapist can be nerve-wracking.
Fair enough.
Yeah. A lot of times, referral. Yeah, I get a lot of referral from my clients as well. And that really helped because they have seen someone who they think that, okay, this person may be able to help you. That will help, in the absence of referral, then people search the net or to look at reviews and all that. But it's really good to have a chat with your prospective counselor or therapist, just to have a sense of where things may be going and whether they are comfortable. I think that is important. Yeah.
Right. So I think when someone already gets to a place where they're open to explore, then that's where the journey begins. I think there is a majority of people in the Asian society, right, that have not really wrapped our heads around what therapy actually is, what therapy actually can do for us, because I think unfortunately there's still a lot of stigma around therapy being therapy is for crazy people, right? You are, if you go for therapy means you belong in IMH, like that unfortunately is still a lot of stigma about going to see a therapist. So in your experience, being a practitioner for quite a while now, do you feel like the situation is improving? That there are more people open, to, I guess, just self-improvement, self-improvement, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm really happy to share that over the years and especially where we are in this culture, the government places a lot of emphasis on mental health. They're spending a lot of money on mental health. Even in the schools, they're putting counselors and all that. So people are beginning to be very aware of the existence of mental health issues, and that, where physical health, it's something where you can see. Mental health is something whereby only and it's hard to detect. So people are beginning to be really more aware of it and to be open into exploring. So when we talk about mental health issues, what's come to their mind would be, let's look for a counselor. That's the easiest, right? You look for a counselor and then to see where it goes. So in that sense, I'm really happy to then say that, well, there is a great awareness and it's getting better day by day. Yeah. We're heading the right direction for sure.
Right. So would you say that the people who start to seek therapy in your experience, right, happen to be younger in nature? Because the older folks, let's say in my parents' generation, they might be in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. They grew up with decades of that mindset. The barrier is slightly tougher to break. Do you think so?
My practice itself, I see from all walks, and particularly, I'm not sure when you say your parents' generation, what age are we talking about, but we're talking about, people in their 40s, 50s, and all 50s, that.
50s, 60s, yeah.
In the 60s, yeah. That again, there's that wanting to break away from the psychological barrier. Now, if there's an issue, let's see how we can let's get help. Yeah, let's be open minded about it. And even when they come and see me or when they come and see us to get help and all that, they would have gone through a lot of thinking, a lot of talking to people, and they would have reasoned with themselves. They would have tried and put themselves at peace and say, okay, this is where I need to go. So I would say that regardless of whether they are young or they are middle-aged or they're older and all that, it's really beginning to be clear to me that people are willing. Once they have their little opening and then they start diving, they can cross a psychological barrier. Yeah. And I'm encouraged by that. So I don't see really a distinct difference that people with the older generation would be a little more shy of stepping into a therapy room.
Right.
Not where I come from.
I see.
Yeah.
So I think I also want to touch on another barrier to seeking therapy, which is pretty common, in my opinion, which is cost. right? Because you do not go to a therapist, like you go to a GP, he prescribe you some medication, probably 1 to 2 weeks later you go back to normal, right? Because therapy is really a process of like a teamwork, working with your therapist to kind of ensure that you have maybe ensure is not the right word, but to kind of like help you have a better quality of life, vice versa. And it's a process, right? This process could take months, it could take years, it could take a lifetime, so obviously cost is a, I think, concern for many people when it comes to therapy. Do you think that many people might not be open to seeking therapy because it is another, like added expense? Yeah.
Sadly, the cost is a barrier to entry, in seeking therapy. And in Singapore itself, there's a wide range from those who offer free therapy, or free counseling, for whatever capacity, to those who it's really a wide range in that sense. And I would urge that to not put a cost on your health, whether it's a physical health, whether it's a mental health. You get sick, you could choose to go to the restructured hospital, for example, or you could go to a private specialist. So in terms of mental health, try not to put a cost in it. I don't think there's a cost, although the payment or the cost, it's a barrier to it. But if you put that aside, look for what really would help you, or look around, search around and see what is suitable or what is comfortable for you, that would be easier, rather than to look at and say, okay, this is going to cost me this much. And of course, the thing that we can do better is to then introduce, I don't know how long it's going to take, but insurance coverage in terms of mental health. And I hope that we'll get there someday. That would be a lot easier.
Right. Yeah. Because generally when it comes to, cost, right? Now, I think we live in a society where instant gratification is like a thing, but with therapy, instant gratification is really not what you get most of the time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. And you go to a GP, you go to a store, you buy something, like you immediately get to hold something, whether it's a pill or whatever. But with therapy, there's a lot of work that needs to be put in, and it's a lot of time that needs to be put in, and there's no instant gratification, which is another barrier lah. Because I think for a lot of Singaporeans, it's like, okay, I pay a certain amount of money, I there's a trade-off, I want to get something in return. But for therapy, we might not see that, until we have put in the work, we have done the work, and we kind of progress, right? So do you think, like in your practice, in your opinion, there is something that can be done to kind of allow people to have that perspective that, therapy, there's really no instant gratification, but in the long run, right, if really there are issues, right, if you don't, then you're going to deteriorate over the long run, and it's going to be even worse, like any bodily health condition, right?
JJ, you brought up a very good point about instant gratification, whereby we're living in such a society that we want things to be really fast. If I want to pay for it, then I want to see results immediately. So a lot has to do with education. A lot has to do with the journey that the therapist would take with his or her client. In a sense, education, and then the journey of discovery, and said, hey, this is where we're going, and there are markers along the way, and say, at this point in time, how do you feel about it at this point in time? Where do you see yourself, and whether this is enough? So instant gratification, in the sense that we tell people there's no instant gratification, or that people run away and say, hey, that's not what I want. But we say this is a journey whereby we're going to take together. And at any point in time, if you feel that you're good enough, any point in time you feel that I've had enough, you take a rest, you take a break and all that. And at certain point in time, you come back again when you want a different perspective, or you're stuck. Then that would be a more complete picture of what therapy would look like. Rather than, I've got this stress issue, I just want step 1, step 2, step 3. Then you really don't need to seek therapists, because you can use, ChatGPT, or you can go to just look the internet. There are tons of information.
Right.
Yeah, there are tons of information in there. Yeah. So the thing that people come to us, we can understand what is it they want. They want results, as well as they want connection, as well as they want to see how we can journey together. So it is really a journey that they can stop they can pause at any point in time.
I think you brought up a good point also. I think, the whole idea of journeying together, because I think there are still many people out there with somewhat of a misconception that seeking a therapist is like going to a mentor where you're going to be given some steps to follow. It's like you're going to see a physiotherapist. You're going to say, oh, you do this exercise, and then after a couple of weeks, you're going to be okay, right? I think people might still have that impression. But when you go and see a psychotherapist or a therapist, it's not exactly to go there to look for answers, right? So if the therapist is not exactly providing you with the roadmap of the future, then how does one, work with the therapist? How does the journey look like?
It's a journey of self-discovery. It's a journey of personal and professional development, and that's the beautiful part about it. You come in, you talk about what do you want to work on, and then at the end of the 15 minutes, you find like, oh, this is I'm good enough. I've got a picture I've got a silhouette of what it looks like. Then that's good enough for you. Yeah, I will walk beside you, but I will not hold your hand. Or I might walk behind you, and when you fall, I will be there to catch you. So whoever that comes in here has got absolute autonomy and power over where they want to go in this journey. Yeah. And my belief is that my client who sit in the session with me, they are the one that knows the best. I don't know. They are the one that they are the master of what they want to do. And that's the most empowering part when you walk out here and know that, okay, right. I'm here and this guy journeys with me and this guy will be there for me if help is needed. Yeah. So when it comes to therapy and counseling, this is often the misconception that, we're going to be there and then the counselor can tell me what to do. And if the therapist or counselor tells you what to do, then there's no ownership of what you're going through. And you'll be always relying on someone and that may be the issues or the problems that brought you into the therapy room itself. So we don't want to duplicate that. That's going to do more harm to the client.
Right. So it's kind of a process or like even almost a training to kind of condition the client to grow himself or herself such that you are not exactly reliant on a third party, whether it's a therapist or a counselor, to kind of like a drug, right? Like that to fall back on every time you hit a wall or so that's why it's a journey. Because it's not like, you take a pill, I prescribe you some instructions and you're good to go. Right.
Yeah, if only mental health was as simple as that, that would be a lot easier. Yeah. And there's also an understanding that, this is a real relationship with the therapist that is not always smooth. It calls for accountability. It calls for being honest and being authentic in this journey itself. The therapist might not be right all the time, and that's okay. Right. That's perfectly fine. I'm not going to pretend and say I know everything else. Then I'm trying to play God, which is not what it should be. So in the real journey, the client will go in and say that, all right, we are human after all, and this is what it's going to look like. We will journey together, we will fall together, we will laugh together, we'll cry together, and then we'll get somewhere. Then we decide what's the next step. Right. Trusting the process.
Just like you mentioned that, the therapist might not be right all the time. Right, and because I guess for you therapists, you are also human. Humans do make mistakes, and I always ask this question to people who are in a position of power, because as a therapist, as a teacher, as a mentor, you are in position of power, because whatever you say, every single word and letter that comes out from your voice can impact someone's lives either extremely positively or extremely negatively. Right, so. As a therapist, surely there are some, rules or ethics or some kind of framework to follow, such that you don't destroy someone's life, right? So how does that work? For therapists.
The basic training when we go through training schools and all that, it's always about doing no harm to yourself and do no harm to your client. So that's what we want to follow. My personal philosophy would really be that, I'm in this journey with you. I'm going to be as real with you. I'm going to check with you and see how things have been, how's the session been, and whether I say some things that didn't sit well with you or that I make a judgment. that was way off, so that if you would be upfront with me, and then I would know how to work with you in that sense. Yeah. And I build hypotheses along the way as well. And the thing to do is that really to understand that this is about my client. This is not about me. This is not about how smart I am. This is not about me using certain jargons or me using certain assessment just to impress my client.
Right.
So I have that in mind to know that this is my client and that I have utmost, not just respect, but beyond that, honor for who they are sitting right in front of me.
Right.
Yeah.
So, that being said, in order to do that, to embody what you said, it really requires a lot of perspective and clarity for the therapist. But for every single therapist, you are also human. You go through the day-to-day, you go through the push and pulls of the tide, and you go through the same things as us, because we are all humans, right? So how does a therapist stay objective, stay clear, and to always have that perspective every time you go into a session, because you live in the same world as us. You're subjected to the same disappointment, the same anger, the same frustration, the same sadness. How do you approach that?
Of course, the easiest word to use is be professional. What does being professional means when I'm also human, when I'm also pretty much very touched by what my client, the story, the narrative they bring into the session here. Reminding myself that I'm human, reminding myself that I have feelings too, reminding myself that this is my client's narrative, this is my client's story, and not to be ahead of them as well. And part of what I do is that, almost every session, I would just check in with myself and say, what's my personal growth? What have I learned from this session? What have I learned from my client's narrative? A lot of times, I am really thankful and really grateful that in working with my clients, that I have so much to pick from them, so much to then go back and say that I'm so grateful that I that this is what I can bring with me, that this is what I can learn with me. I can learn from my clients' resilience most of the time. And I don't think they ever know how grateful I am in working with them, Yeah, and it's just, I just don't have the word for it. But in terms of personal growth, there's so much that I would pick from them. Yeah.
So, that requires a lot of perspective on the therapist's end as well, because I think we still live in a place where, like you listen to a client's narrative, and the energy, most of the time clients go to you because there are issues, right? They are mostly broken, or there are issues lah, and as humans with issues, we tend to project, right? And who better to project it onto than the freaking guy that I'm paying for therapy, right? So it's a therapists also kind of get the full brunt of the projection or whatever. The clients might sometimes be not very easy to handle, and the life is in your hands lah. So do most therapists also have a therapist to kind of for lack of a better description, kind of keep you in check so that you can always find the clarity and the perspective to do good for your clients?
Yeah. Just as our client needs help, we need help as well from time to time, right? We are not exempted from any of those issues that our client my client would bring into the session. And of course, we are trained for it. We are trained to take whatever that the client would bring. Yeah, it comes to training. And your question about whether the therapist need the therapist herself, the answer is most certainly yes, without a doubt. I have my own therapist. I have my own my own group therapist. I have my own peer supervision as well, whereby we talk about things that affect us. Yeah, and because we can't bring the issues, we can't project onto family members, we can't project onto friends and all that.
Right.
Then that would be disastrous.
Absolutely.
So absolutely, any therapist, any counselor out there would really need someone to walk with them along the journey as well.
Right, more so than a regular guy seeking.
A lot more so, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is true. That is so true.
It's a tough journey. Because it's for the therapist, right? It's a tough journey because you are. I guess the perspective is that you're basically in your studio, in your clinic or whatsoever, listening to people's issues like every day. Every day is issues after issues after issues, and you're there to guide them. And even with therapy, it's a process, it's a journey. So if anything, your resilience also needs to be super, super strong. And many therapists along the way maybe find their specialty or their niche, or like the way that they would like to work with clients. There are psychotherapists that use visuals, art form as a way, as a medium to kind of communicate. There are therapists that use animals, right? Psychotherapists that use animals as a means of communicating with the client, whether it's to set up the environment. And for you, a lot of people kind of refer you and know you because you actually, I don't know if I can use the word specialize, but you kind of do this thing called a process group a lot, right? So can you explain to us what's the difference between a one-on-one therapy session with you and a process group?
Sure. First of all, you mentioned about the tough journey for me or for us. I would say that, for my client who's sitting in there opposite me, it can be a tough journey for me, and it's a professional hazard for me as well, to be in this human relationship.
Yeah.
When it comes to individual therapy and group itself, studies have shown, research has shown that the efficacy of it or the effectiveness of it is actually about the same, whether you do individual or you do groups. But what I do specializing in process group is whereby I have people coming in, and the main objective, the idea of a group in a process group is really for people to connect. To connect in the here and now, bringing their real, raw emotions into the sessions. Whatever they're feeling right now, in the moment, we want to process them through. Yeah. And then there's a great sense of awareness, of self-awareness of, my interpersonal relationship with people, how do I deal with it? My intrapersonal relationship, the way that I run away from pain, the way that I would embrace joy and everything else would all come out in a process group. And that makes it so special because it is so real time. It is so raw. It is so intimate, whereby, people go and say, wow, we would never be able to do this outside. Well, the thing is that you can, not that you can't. Once you have learned to connect in a way that suits you, in a way that best kind of like, warms you. When you go out there, there's a transfer of learning whereby you can then be able to bring this, what you like, into a workplace, into your family members. So this is what I do as a process group, whereby it's a very intimate connection with a group of people, and I do it over a weekend, 2 full days, whereby they sit there, and what I ask them to do is just be human and just connect as you would in real time, in the here and now. Be real, be authentic. Take risks with people, get feedback, give feedback to people as well. And that's really, really powerful.
So what's the key difference between a process group and regular group therapy?
So there are many types of group. Psychoeducational group, whereby people get together and then learn a specific topic, like for example, self-esteem. This is what we're going to do. We're going to learn about self-esteem with some activities. There's therapy group as well. Therapy group can be generic. Therapy group can be just for a certain aspect of it. There's also support group. There's a cancer support group and everything else. And then there's a process group among the many other groups. So the key difference in a process group is that we work in the here and now, whereby it can be anxiety provoking, whereby the participants are allowed to project onto the facilitator. So if they're anxious, if they are thinking like, what the hell are we doing here? There's no agenda. What do you want us to talk about? I welcome them to project onto me. Yeah. People want control, and then they realize that, they're giving away a lot of control to people. So there are a lot of other groups, and what I run is a process group, whereby, like I say, it is designed for a human-to-human, real-time, raw connections. And this is where the group as a microcosm, the people that we talk to, we realize that, hey, I kind of like, this guy reminds me of my dad, or this guy reminds me of my boss that I don't like. And this is where we can learn new ways of interacting with people. And it's very fast-paced. That's primarily the difference. Intense.
And it can be quite exhausting, right? Because it's two full days of 2 full days of anxiety-driven conversations, and like you said, it's happening in the here and now. Like you cannot just run away from it because you're kind of stuck in the room with a couple of people and the facilitator. So are there any, I guess, protection in place for people who might not be ready to be in there for 2 whole days grilling and with in anxiety driven conversations?
I don't know about grilling too, but we just be ourselves. And the first part of it is that, and look at it as a parallel process. It's intense, it's anxiety provoking, yet it is enriching, it is empowering, yet it is a journey moving forward, in terms of our personal growth, in terms of taking care of. I see the 2-day process group as a self-care. So ask anybody, do you need to take care of yourself? Yes. And if you want to join a process group, that's a form of self-care. Of course, it's a self-care. Now, the thing about it is that I have a pre-session meet with the individual participants, just to give them an idea of what this is going to look like. And I tell them that, in the 2-day session, if you don't want to be engaged, that's fine. Just be yourself, because you're being yourself. If you want to fall asleep, just be yourself. But just allow the group dynamics to bring you in, to usher you in. So people are allowed to be themselves. They're allowed to zone out. The only commitment is that they're going to sit there for the 2 full days. Even if they close their eyes, they sleep, that's okay. That's allowing the group dynamics. That's allowing, whatever that happens in there to soak in there and to see how they want to be involved at any point in time. In any case, out of the 10 participants or so, we all connect at different emotional level with each one of them. So that's perfectly fine. So it's not like going there and then I'll be so stuck in there and then I'll be bombarded and all that. No, you're just going there to be yourself. Your only commitment is to sit in there for 2 days. You're tired, you zone out, that's perfectly fine. Yeah, so there's no pressure in that sense. They're just there just to learn to connect.
So with so many different forms of group therapy, so many different forms of psychotherapy, even if someone were to decide to take the step to go for psychotherapy, where would they begin looking for their therapist? Because I guess there's so many practitioners out there. How would you kind of do your best to ensure that the one that you're going for is what you need?
So this is a really $1 million question, in the sense that we can do what we want, we can look at the internet, we can ask for referrals and all that. Nothing beats really being there for a session to test it out and see whether this is the right fit between the therapist and the client. But of course, due diligence need to be done in a sense that, you do your research, you ask people, how is this therapist like? How's his way of working? And what's he like in a sense? Yeah. Having said that, there is, in my personal opinion, there's no 100% way of knowing that's a real fit until you try, until you go for it. And then even if you go for it, talk to your therapist after the first session and say, hey, this isn't what it is. Can we do something about it? Or do you think that, that we or look for someone else in that sense? Be real, be authentic. And this is where the journey begins, really. The interaction with the therapist. Yeah, I wish I could say there's a sure way.
Right.
Of course, if you look at the internet, they will tell you, look for it and what is that they want, check and credential and everything else. But it comes down to that very personal touch between therapist and the client.
So essentially, what you're saying is give it a shot and do your best to be your most authentic and genuine self while you're giving a shot. And the therapy process is a journey, but the seeking for a therapist process is also like a pre-journey, like a journey in itself.
Very much.
Right. Okay. Yeah. If someone wants to connect with you, someone wants to kind of find out a little bit more about how they might be able to work with you, what you do, your process groups and things like that, is there somewhere that they can find out more?
Sure. They can look for me at www.thepsychotherapyclinic.com.sg, or they can WhatsApp me at 88284006.
Nice. Okay. Thank you so much for coming in today, Simon.
You're welcome.
And thank you so much for sharing. I think it's very insightful, and I hope many people who might be watching or listening to this will take the first step forward into a more enriching life for ourselves.
That's what I hope too.
Right. Thank you. And we will see you next time on the One Day at a Time podcast. Peace.